Well, like I did last week with my Tigers, I just wanted to touch on like major top storylines that I'll be watching for the 2024 season. The first of which would be, which Cody Bellinger are we going to get? I've talked about it many times, but he is the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde of baseball players right now. He's either the MVP or he is the worst batter in baseball. He was tremendous for the Cubs in the first 5 months of the season, and then fell off a cliff in the last month. I'm just really curious to see how that plays out now that they've signed him. I didn't think it was a mistake to sign him. I thought it'd be a huge mistake to sign him to a long-term guaranteed deal of 6 or 7 years. Shorter term deal is something that the Cubs can absorb, but if he can produce the way he did the first 5 months, the Cubs are in good shape. But if he reverts back to what he was, being dominated by velocity at the end of last season, it's going to be trouble because he was the engine of that offense for 5 months at least.
Yeah, I mean, coming to the Cubs, his slugging percentages were 455 in 20, 302 in 21, and 389 in 22.
Slugging percentage?
Yes. His OPS
Yikes.
2022 was 654. He's terrible.
Yikes.
He's fucking terrible in LA. That's why he couldn't get a long-term contract, because he had 3 horrific years with the Dodgers before coming to the Cubs. The Cubs are sitting in a
Cubs got him for a year.
Yeah. I mean,
17 million.
I think he can do what he, at least get around what he did last year. I don't see why he can't, but there is a question. I mean, there is a huge question mark with the guy. I mean,
that's why I'm bringing it up.
It's crazy. I know 21 was a shortened season, but his OPS plus was 44. 81.
What was his? Do you have his OPS for last season?
Yeah, it was 881.
I thought it was way over 8, but OPS plus has to be like 120,
133.
Jesus, yeah. So even with that bad last month, my God.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why it's not a bad deal for
I don't think it is.
You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. There's just like, it's the reason like that's the reason why the deal is the way it is. That's all that needs to be said. I'm not going to say anything else. You look at those numbers and you say, that's why it's the way it is.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. It made sense for both parties, worked for everybody except for maybe Scott Boras. So no one feels bad for. My number 2 storyline, actually, these are just questions now that I realize it going into 2024. But what is the Craig Counsell effect? What effect will that really have on the team? Is it they got rid of their well-liked and respected manager that you and I thought overachieved as manager last year with the Cubs, as they were projected to only win 77 games, I think.
Agreed.
He was well above that. So how much further above that will the guidance of Craig Counsell be? I think there's potential to be more, but there's always debate on what a manager is really worth. Is it worth 5 wins? Is it worth 5 losses with a shitty manager? It's so hard to quantify, but and it's still going to be impossible to quantify even after the season, unless of course somehow they win the World Series. You're going to say it was the best managerial decision anyone's ever made. So it's never going to be necessarily answered throughout the season, but it's just going to be a question that's out there. How is he affecting it? I think one thing we will definitely see is there will be less bunting. As David Ross is my biggest criticism of him was he was ready and willing to give up outs at the drop of a hat, which is a frustrating thing for anyone that pays attention to analytics. I don't think we'll see that with Craig Counsell. So I also have faith that he can manage the bullpen throughout the season, so it won't run out of gas the way it did in September last year. He's done it before, so hopefully he can manage it. I guess this could all be answered in September. If the Cubs are running out of steam, if they've had a good season, and then fall flat like they did last year, or if they can avoid that, I think you got to give some credit to Craig Counsell. That might be the Craig Counsell effect.
Yeah.
Number 3 on my list. Go ahead.
No, I don't think Craig Counsell is going to make that big of a difference for the team. But
again, yeah, I think it's negligible. I think you could attribute success or failure to a manager that's not necessarily because of him. I guess it'll be interesting to see how those it's more narrative based than anything, but
Yeah,
we'll see how
sure.
those play out.
Yeah.
Next on my list is Justin Steele, a true ace. If he is an ace, this mitigates a lot of my consternation with the Cubs rotation going into the season that I think is not deep enough. But if he can really recreate what he did last year, if that's what he is going forward, the Cubs rotation is in good shape. The problem is that I've seen in many places where he's a prime candidate for aggression this year, which would be pretty devastating to what is already a thin rotation. If he is not what he looked like throughout most of last year, it would be trouble. It's going to be big trouble. And it doesn't matter how great a manager or how shitty a manager Craig Counsell may or may not be. If your pitching staff isn't there for you, there's not much you can do. So I think Justin Steele there's going to be a lot on his shoulders this year, and we'll see if he can deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about if the players don't perform the way they're supposed to perform, then the manager always gets blamed for it. So that it'll be on Counsell whether he deserves it or not. But you got again, Justin Steele went the route of Cody Bellinger last year because over that last month of the season, his ERA was 6.75.
Mm-hmm.
He was not, his WHIP was 1.4.
Yeah,
So
that's where
like
people are looking at the possible regression for 2024.
yeah, so you gotta, he could have just been tired. It was his first full season, right? So I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's very plausible. But
yeah, could be may not even see that this year. So there, yeah, you're right. It's like you are presenting like it's just a bunch. It's question marks because if I expect him to start out just fine, but the question is how long can he keep that up, and we'll
yeah,
find out. But I mean, he was incredible at times last year.
yeah,
So
he's a beast. The potential is right there, and we've seen it. It's just a matter of maintaining it throughout the season and doing it year after year. That's what makes you an ace. My next question for the 2024 season is: can Christopher Morel play third base? If he can somehow play third base, that solves a lot of issues for the Cubs to find an easy way to get him in the lineup every day. If he can't, he's going to be a DH, which is very debilitating and kind of locks the lineup up. Doesn't lead to much flexibility or opportunity for others. Yeah, it's just amazing somebody with that much offensive potential and that athletic cannot figure out how to play the field at any position. They haven't found for him. They're trying their best to play him at third, and he had 2 errors yesterday alone at third base. It's just a disaster, and it's not changing. It doesn't feel like the Cubs are putting a brave face on it and putting their spin on it. Like they're saying, like Craig Counsell specifically said, we want him to make errors in spring training, so he can get that out of his system or learn from it, and not have those same situations happen in the regular season. But we still have never seen him be able to play a decent field position at all. So it solves a lot of issues if he can just be serviceable, maybe a little bit below average, but just not a disaster in the field. But we just have never seen it. So that's a massive question right there, because you want his bat in the lineup every single day with that kind of power. He might be their best power hitter already, which is
yeah,
it's just amazing. So
yeah, I was gonna say you need the bat in the lineup. I mean, his numbers were very similar to Cody Bellinger's last year from a power standpoint.
yeah, he
Because
had 27 home runs in the majors, but he had 11 in the minors before they finally called him up. So there's obvious 40 home run potential, which is very rare in the league these days. So that's going to be fun to watch. It's certainly going to be interesting watching every ground ball hit his way. What's going to happen on that play? But the final question or storyline I have for 2024: who is Shota Imanaga, and can he adapt to the major leagues? What is he really going to be? Well, we've seen his career in Japan, but how does that translate in the majors? He is a fly ball pitcher, prone to giving up the home run. He
yes,
always has been.
we talked
He is
about
certainly not a fireballer. He lives around 90 miles an hour. He lives on guile, deception. The problem is giving up fly balls all the time could be a major problem in Wrigley Field or in the major leagues in general. If the wind's blowing in, it's not a problem. We'll see how that works, but it's just going to be really interesting to see how his skills translate to the majors, because you just never know. You cannot. You try to understand, extrapolate from a career in Japan how that's going to translate into the majors, but you just never know. So that, he's really their number 3 starter, maybe number 2 starter at this point, and that's such a huge question mark to have at that point. That's also what puts a greater emphasis on Justin Steele being an ace to pick up that slack if there is any. So that's going to be fun to watch. Those are all things I am excited to see as we go into this 2024 Cubs season.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Word Hole Media.